we start the research process with the research problem, right? Now, if you don't have enough information on the research problem itself, right, it's very difficult to find out the exact research objectives, because the research problem itself is so complex, or there is a lot of uncertainty. You don't have all the details to define your specific objectives. Then that itself will call for a research, right? So the initial research to explore the different dimensions of the research problem, right, that will belong to a category called exploratory research design. So basically, exploratory research will not take you to any conclusion, because that's not the objective of exploratory research. Exploratory research design is used when you don't have enough details about the research problem itself. So you carry out a loosely structured preliminary investigation or exploration into that particular phenomenon, into that particular research problem. That is called exploratory research design. Okay. Now, another category or class of research design is called conclusive research design. Conclusive research design, from the name itself, is very clear. Conclusive. So this research design is used to reach certain conclusions. Okay, so research design followed so that you can reach at conclusions on some problem, right? That is called
Hello?
conclusive research design. Now, the requirement for conclusive research
പറഞ്ഞില്ലല്ലോ.
design is what? When you start out, you should know the research problem well. You should know the specific research objectives very clearly. You can identify the objectives of that particular research very clearly. In that case, you can go for conclusive research design. Okay, so you can have a very structured design for your research. So before you start out, you will be able to say, okay, what should be the sources of data, how you will go about collecting the data, and after the data collection, how you will analyze the data. Everything will be very clear even at the beginning, right? So that is called conclusive research design. So the major classification of research design is this. You have exploratory research and then conclusive research, right? Now, conclusive research itself can be divided into descriptive research and causal research. Descriptive research and causal research. This, briefly I told you in the first, initial sessions. But again, for the benefit of those who are sitting for the first time in the class, I'll just repeat it. Conclusive research design, the first category is descriptive research. Descriptive research means basically you are trying to describe the state of affairs as it exists. Okay. Research is basically, it's about one particular phenomenon, right? For example, customer satisfaction, or it could be employee satisfaction, or in certain cases, brand perception, right? So it's about you are actually researching into certain phenomenon, right? Now, that phenomenon, if you're trying to just find out, the state of affairs, what is actually happening with that particular variable or phenomenon, that is called descriptive research. For example, you would like to know the satisfaction level of particular one certain category. Let's say, Royal Enfield bikes. Okay, so you're conducting a research into customer satisfaction of let's say this particular bike in QSAT, right? So among QSAT students, what is the customer satisfaction level with this, bullet, right? So now here, you're just simply reporting on the satisfaction level. You're finding out, okay, what is, what is it, buyer profile, or user profile of Enfield bikes in QSAT, right? So what is their average age? What is how many kilometers do they ride on an average in a day? And what is the current level of satisfaction? Are they satisfied with the performance? Are they satisfied with the service? Uh, you know, so all these things, you're simply reporting, right? You're just finding out what's actually happening there. So you're describing. That's why it's called descriptive research. Okay. Now you want to really, look at why is it so. Okay, why satisfaction level is high? Now you won't try to look at if they increase the price, will the satisfaction go up? Will the satisfaction go down? All these things, you don't really get into those things. You will simply find out what, when, where, what, that's it. Okay, so that's a case of descriptive research. That's why it's also called ex post facto research. Ex post facto, that means something has happened, something is happening, you're just looking at it, you're just reporting. That's descriptive research. And so certain people, some people call it even reporting studies, because that's what you are doing there, right? Now, under conclusive research design, there is another category which is called causal research. Okay, causal research is, here the research is conducted to find out the cause and effect relationship among variables. Okay, so you are not, there to just report what's happening. You are trying to find out the cause and effect of certain phenomena. Why does it happen that way? What's the reason for this? Okay, if I increase the level of one variable, what will happen to the level of the other variable? Okay, for example, let's say that when income increases let's say in an economy, what will happen to the consumption of food, or of let's say entertainment services, or let's say mobile technology services? So here, there is some kind of exploration of cause and effect. So that's called causal research, right? So broadly, you have to just look at it. One broad classification, very broadest level of classification is two. Okay, you have got two classes. One is exploratory research and then conclusive research, right? Now, the next level is that conclusive research design itself can be divided into descriptive and causal research. So basically, if someone asks you what are the different types of research design, you must be able to say that it's exploratory, descriptive, and causal. Okay, but descriptive and causal will, of course, will can be categorized under a broader category of conclusive. Okay, but basically three types: research design: exploratory research, descriptive research, and causal research, right? Okay, now we'll just get into the details of this. Okay, then I'll tell you there are five, the final classification for descriptive. We'll discuss this. Now, whatever we have discussed, you have it on the slide. Exploratory and conclusive, what's the basic difference? Okay, exploratory research is undertaken to provide insights and understanding. Okay, that means you don't know one particular phenomenon that well. So exploratory research is conducted as a preliminary investigation, so that you have an understanding and insight about something. Okay, you won't be able to reach at one conclusion. You won't be able to say that, okay, this is what exactly is happening there. No, right? Now, the second one is conclusive. Okay, conclusive research is to test hypothesis and examine relationship. That means you will be able to reach at some certain conclusions. That's it. Don't worry about the term hypothesis and relationship. We will be discussing these things in detail later. Okay. Now, characteristics, just look at the characteristics. can see that exam information is needed, and that what information is needed is not very clear at the moment, right? When you start exploratory research. Okay, so that's why the entire structure is kind of very loose and flexible. Okay, and sample is very small, and it need not be a representative. Analysis of primary data is basically qualitative, right? Okay. Now, for conclusive, very clearly defined objective will be there. So you will be able to know that what information is needed. In fact, when you do descriptive research, commercial, business research, what we do is when you after designing the research, after spelling out the data collection sources, the method of the data collection, analysis of data, tools, etc., what you do is you will even have dummy tables. Dummy tables means you very clearly know what data you need for this kind of research, right? So even though you haven't started collecting your data, okay, after data collection, how you will represent that data through tables, graphs, so dummy tables, it means empty tables can even be constructed, so that as and when the data comes in, once the data collection is over, once you process and analyze the data, numbers can get into these tables. Okay, that level of specificity will be there in the case of descriptive research. Okay, so mostly this descriptive research and causal research will be quantitative. Okay, it doesn't mean that you can't have qualitative data, but mostly you will deal with quantitative data with numbers in the case of descriptive and causal research. Okay, but in the case of exploratory, it will be more of qualitative data. One example is, you remember that video? You have done the assignment, right? Yes, most of you have written well. Although I was very happy that some of you could. A good number of you could actually identify or connect it with research or research process. Okay, and others analyzed it in their own way, like the business aspects or the marketing perspective. I could see from some students looked at it entirely from marketing perspective, and they said why it's important to look at customer needs and that kind of but anyway, I was very happy with the kind of thing, because we just had two sessions and I didn't clearly tell you what or from what angle you should look at it, or the we have just started out, right? But still, I was. So if you remember the video, it was all about McDonald's, right? So McDonald's, they thought they made very some changes in the flavors. They improved the quality, the flavors. A lot more flavors were introduced, and still sales didn't pick up, right? And then the professor, Clayton Christensen, he's one of the most celebrated, experts, or you can say he's, of course, was a Harvard Business School professor, and he's written extensively on strategy and marketing. Okay, there's something called, disruptive innovation. It's a concept called disruptive innovation, and it's basically, and he's written so much on that, and he has got a very famous, work on disruptive innovation. It's called Christensen and Bower 1986. I don't remember the title of the paper, but usually we cite it as that, Christensen and Bower. Bower is another, his co-author. Okay, it was published in 1986 in Harvard Business Review. So anyway, so that's a background of the person who is sitting there. He's not a he's not just somebody. Okay, he is really somebody in strategy and marketing. Okay. All right. So coming back to the problem, McDonald's. So they just looked at what did they do? Did they really start a very structured research process? No. He had his people, waiting at the restaurant from 6 or 7 in the morning, right? 6:30 in the morning, and then they just simply watched customers going in and going out, and how they bought things, and then they just interviewed people like, why are you buying this? What's the reason you're buying this particular product? And then so that's a kind of exploratory research. Okay. Now it's not loosely, it's not very clearly defined. Like you don't have a questionnaire with you. They didn't clearly have a list of questions to ask. They just observed people, and as they came in, they asked some of them, like, where are you going, and why are you buying this milkshake? Why are you not getting something else? And all those things, right? Now, just a single day, at the end of the day, they got a lot of insights and understanding into, people buying milkshake. Very simple thing, right? They just found that most people bought milkshake in the morning, and they were driving to their work, right? So that's the thing. So now, based on this, they now have an understanding of what kind of people and what's the reason for reason why people buy milkshakes so early in the morning. Now they can't reach a conclusion there. They now have an understanding. They can now follow it up with a detailed, a more extensive research, so that they will get to know about, or they can reach at some conclusion, right? Got it. So that's a utility of exploratory. That's a real use and application of exploratory research. Exploratory research itself will not help you answer your problems or answer your research questions, but it will give you a lot of data, a lot of information, so that you can design a research in a more structured way, and then you can do a descriptive research or causal research and find answers to your questions, right? So that's it. So another thing is the findings and the results coming out of exploratory, they tend to be tentative. Tentative means not final. Tentatively speaking, yes, this is the situation. People buy milkshake because they are on their way to McDonald's. I hope you know about McDonald's. McDonald's in the US, in North America, in US and Canada, it's called a drive-in restaurants. It's not a sit-in dining place in out there. But here, the profile and the purpose is different, right? Because here you can see people going to McDonald's just because you want to go to McDonald's. That's not the way it's positioned in the US. It's most McDonald's outlets are located on the highways. Highways are not our national highways. These highways are high speed highways. You don't have exit points for kilometers and kilometers. Like once you get into highways, it's very difficult to take an exit. You'll have to travel a lot. You don't have this traffic signals at every kilometer, just like here, national highway in Kochi. You know that at every there is a U-turn at every 500 meters, right? And still we call it a highway, but then that's not the case there. So what happens is that people travel a lot of travel for drive 4 hours on the highway to reach their locations, because cities. Spaces are very expensive. Residential spaces will be very expensive, so people live in the outskirts, and then they drive to these commercial or in business centers. So if it is New York, this Manhattan and all those things, their residential apartments are not there. I mean, will be very, very few. So people live in the residential areas, they have to drive, okay? And it doesn't take that much time. Unlike here, people travel around, 60 kilometers. That's normal to reach this. So what they do is, so as they drive, they just, drive in things. Sometimes, you don't have to even get out of the car to grab something from on the way, and then they go. Okay, so that's the case. The rest is actually, it's there in the video. Since you have seen it, I won't repeat it. But then that's the thing, right? Now, these findings, now you know how, things are, or you say, like, that about that particular phenomenon no more intimately, so that you can follow it up with the descriptive research. Okay, now the outcome is this, so you have to just look at the objective. What's the difference in the case of exploratory and conclusive? What are the basic characteristics of exploratory and conclusive? Findings and results tend to be tentative for exploratory, conclusive for conclusive research. Outcome is that it's generally followed up by conclusive research. Okay, so that's a case about this one. Okay, so the rest is actually the same thing. I'll just quickly run through the slide because I have explained that enough. So just look at the uses of exploratory research. Basically, to formulate a problem or define a problem more precisely. That's a basic use of exploratory research. And then you can identify alternative courses of action. Okay. You can develop hypothesis based on exploratory research. You won't validate your hypothesis now based on exploratory research. You can develop hypothesis. Now, what do we mean by hypothesis? Hypothesis is, let me see how many of you can just help me with that. Just, what did you understand from the term hypothesis? Yes? One of you, please. I just want to find out, how many of you are sleeping, how many of you have left the chat. Really? Uh,
Ma'am,
yes, that.
imaginary.
Who is that? Clinita? Yeah, tell me.
I think imaginary.
Imaginary. Okay, we'll come. That should be, yes, you were.
It's an assumption.
It's an?
It's an assumption.
It's an assumption. Then, Clinita also, I guess you also meant that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Imaginary when you said, okay, it's an assumption. Okay, it's an assumption you state at the beginning of the research, and then you will go on to prove or disprove that assumption. You basically trying to validate your assumption through data. Okay, you start with an assumption, and that assumption in the research context is called hypothesis. Okay, so now what you do is you conduct the research so that you can validate it. So at the end of the research, sometimes you might accept the research, hypothesis, or sometimes you might have to even reject it. That's called a research hypothesis. Okay, all right. Now, coming back, I think you can still see the presentation. Yes. Okay. Right. So, exploratory research can help you formulate hypothesis. Exploratory research will not help you in validating hypothesis, but then you can formulate hypothesis based on what you found, what you find through your exploratory research. And you will be able to even isolate key variables and relationship for further examination. Okay, key variables mean one problem you take. There are, a problem is never unidimensional. Unidimensional means having only one dimension or single dimension. Okay, a research problem is usually multi-dimensional, a business research problem. So when you say sales decline, is sales the only variable there? No, right? There are certain other variables which are very important, right? You might, when you look at your data and when you talk to people handling that sales department, you will understand that, okay, price is important, maybe advertisement is important, income of people, that locality, that or people buying your product, who are your customers, that's very important, right? And even in certain cases, even agriculture protection could be important for your sales, right? For example, in North India, if you have a good crop, okay, and usually the production goes up, okay, because the market improves, people buy more, right? And when you have a very bad monsoon, and then the crop and the when that agriculture input output is down, usually the economy will also suffer. So there are many variables which are important to one thing, right? So you should be able to, you will be able to isolate or identify these certain key variables and relationships through exploratory research, right? And you will have better understanding or insights of the problem, so that it will help you in designing your research better. Okay, otherwise you are starting from out of thin air. You can't formulate, or you can't actually build a research design. You should know some kind of, should have an understanding, right? Some small, let's say, even if it is very feeble or dim, some light should be there so that you can see at least parts of that problem. Otherwise you will be in complete darkness, right? So that is called the exploratory research, and you will be able to establish priorities for further research. Okay, so that's a case of exploratory research. Okay, now we'll come to this. I didn't tell you. Methods of exploratory research means that what are the methods you adopt to conduct exploratory research. Okay, briefly we will look at it now, because all these things, will go back. All these methods will have to go back when we discuss data collection methods in detail. Okay, now just look at it briefly. Now, the exploratory research methods are basic methods are one is survey of experts, or it's also called experience survey. Okay. Now, let's say you would like to, I give you an assignment. Just imagine that I give you an assignment, and this assignment is like, you don't know anything about it. For example, I'll just tell you that, how analytics can help let's say, a fashion store located in Kochi. Okay. Now let's for a moment think that you don't know anything about analytics. You don't know anything about retail, fashion retail. So what do? Okay. One method is that you can ask people who know something about this, right? Okay, how will you go about finding out how analytics can really help these things? So let's say you find somebody who is actually managing a fashion store in Kochi. So you just go and talk to him about the fashion retail scene in Kochi. Okay, what are the different prominent locations of fashion stores in Kochi, and how much business do they do in a day? What's the average number of footfalls in a store? All these things you will be able to find out from experts, right? So this experience survey is one method, although it's not a formal, or let's say it's not a conclusive research method. Okay, so but exploratory research you basically do survey of experts. Okay, another method is that you can even conduct a pilot survey. Pilot. Okay, pilot actually means pilot is something which goes in front, right? something is coming, something more final is coming, and then something which goes initially or go in the front. So surveys, pilot surveys are mini surveys, small surveys you do before the final full blown survey. That's called a pilot survey. For example, let's say you're planning to conduct a customer survey of 1,000 people, right? Now, before you do this 1,000 people survey, you can conduct, let's say, a survey with 50 people. Okay. And then you analyze the data so that you will know whether your questionnaire, the collection instrument, the questionnaire, like uh, the list of questions. At this point, understand it as a list of questions you will ask the customers. Now, the list of questions, are the questions okay? Do people understand these questions? Okay. Uh, then another thing is, what are the practical problems you might come across when you do the survey? So that before you take up the 1,000 respondent survey, you will have an idea. You can make changes in your questionnaire, you can make changes in the structure of the questions, or sometimes the order of questions. So that's the purpose of pilot surveys. So exploratory research, as part of exploratory research, a pilot survey can be conducted. And when you do this pilot survey, you will be able to finalize the real survey. Okay, so that is another method you can use. Okay, another thing is secondary data analyzed in a very qualitative way. Secondary data means basically data can be classified as primary data and secondary data. Primary data means a data which you collect for the specific purpose of that specific research. Okay, for example, I would like to know the satisfaction level of my employees in the company. There are 1,000 employees in my company. Okay, I would like to know the satisfaction level. I conduct a research. Now, what I do is I prepared a questionnaire, I distributed among these people, then I got the data, right? Now, this can be called a primary data because this data is collected for the specific purpose, for the purpose of this specific research. It didn't exist. Okay, it was not in existence. I collected afresh for the purpose of my research. Such data are called primary data. Okay, all survey data can be called primary data that way. Okay, or you conduct interview with people. That's a to collect information, and that's an example of primary data. Now, let's say for the employee satisfaction, same research problem, I just looked at the complaint box. Okay, complaint box log. I just looked at the complaints, and then I looked at the employee complaints about the lack of facilities in the washroom and the lunchroom, all the lack of facilities in their plant and all those things. There are a lot of letters. I just looked at them. I read all these things, and I found that there is a lot of problem with the physical facilities in the plant. Right now, uh, is an example of secondary data because this data was already in existence, and the data was not collected for the research purpose, for my research purpose, for the specific research purpose. Okay, complaint box or the complaint log was there, is available, right? So but for my research, I'm using that source. Okay, and that's why it's called secondary data. Got it. Let's say you are trying to open a shop in Kochi. Okay, and you would like to know the customer profile of that, of that locality, the average income, the age profile, and things of that sort. Okay, you look at the latest census results. Okay, from the government side, you can download the for that specific. Municipality or corporation or for that particular area, You will know how many are men, how many are women in that locality, what's the age profile, things of that sort, right? Now, this is an example of secondary data because the government, the survey department or the census department, they didn't collect the data so that you can use it for your purpose, right? It's already in existence. Okay. So that's why it's called secondary data, right? So that's it. I hope you understand the difference, primary and secondary. Yes, do you understand? Because that's very important, because people, even after the entire syllabus is over, people get confused with what is secondary and primary. Let me ask you one question, just to I just would like to check whether you understand. um, okay.